My name is Clara, 35 years old, living and working as an attorney in New York. I thought I'd grown used to being forgotten. But that morning, sitting in my office after a successful court hearing, my mother sent a message made of exactly 14 words. This Thanksgiving, the family only wants Lily and the kids. Don't come home. I read it over and over, my chest hollow. The room suddenly felt colder, as if someone had slammed the door of memory right in my face. I once paid my mother's hospital bills. I raised Lily through her divorce. And yet, have you ever been shut out by your own family, even though you were the one holding them together all those years? If this story stirs something in your heart, leave a comment below. Tap like if you've ever felt like the extra piece in your own home. And don't forget to subscribe, because what I did after reading that message was something no one in the family saw coming. I'm the eldest daughter in a household of 3 women and 1 quiet man. Growing up, I learned to give my sister the better portion, carry the bags for my mother, and even finish Lily's homework, without ever asking for a thank you. My father, a retired mechanic with a back injury, spent most days sitting silently on the sofa. The television was the only voice he listened to. My mother kept herself busy as a wife, a mother, and the lifelong screenwriter of Lily's perfect life. I remember those winter evenings when I was 12, holding a textbook in one hand and a warm water bottle in the other, placing it on Lily's lap while she battled a fever. When Mom entered the room, she didn't ask if I'd finished studying. She only said, "Keep an eye on her, Clara. She's fragile, not like you." That phrase never changed, not once in 23 years. I was strong. I was independent. I didn't need anything. Which meant, I didn't need love. Lily was always the center. When she was accepted into a local nursing college, my mom called every relative, threw a small party, even printed invitations. When I received a full-ride scholarship to Columbia, she said simply, "That school's fine, I guess." Didn't hurt me. Back then, I thought I was doing the right thing, being the older sister standing behind so she could rise. But over time, I realized I wasn't lifting her. I was the step they all climbed over. In Lily's final year of college, Mom was diagnosed with a thyroid tumor. I had just graduated and landed a junior position at a small law firm, barely making enough to cover rent. No one asked how I'd manage. I quietly sent home nearly my entire first paycheck, and then the second. Lily kept going to school, visiting nail salons, posting pictures with captions like, "College life is so hard." She never once asked where Mom had her surgery, whether it hurt or if she needed anything. That was all on me. And when Mom recovered, no one ever said thank you. When Lily got married, Mom rented a church, booked a band, even hired a professional videographer. I paid for half the expenses since Dad had already retired and his pension couldn't cover the cost. On the wedding day, I was seated by the door near the restroom, because the main table was already full with the groom's friends. I told myself not to be petty. I was the grown-up. I understood. 2 years later, Lily divorced. Her husband had cheated, but according to Mom, it was because the poor man couldn't handle the stress of the family. And by family, she meant me, my dad, anyone who wasn't Lily. I still sent money every month because Lily had 2 kids and daycare was expensive. I still drove over on weekends to take Mom to the grocery store, take Dad to eye appointments, repaint the house. No one asked if I was tired or needed a break. Then one day I asked, "Mom, why is it always me who takes care of everything?" She looked me straight in the eye and replied without missing a beat, "Because you can, Clara. Lily can't." Her voice didn't carry judgment. It was as if she were stating a law of nature. I didn't answer. I just remember going home, opening my laptop, and transferring Lily's 3rd-year tuition. That was 5 years ago. And until that morning when I read the words, "Don't come home this Thanksgiving," I finally understood that in that house, I wasn't a daughter, a sister, or even part of the story. I was the emergency service they dialed 24/7. When they were fine, I was irrelevant. When they struggled, I became the solution. I used to think that if I just tried a little harder, Mom would be proud of me, like she was when Lily folded laundry neatly or made a simple noodle soup. But that belief became like ink bleeding across white fabric. The harder I tried, the more it stained. Once, I told her I'd been selected to represent our firm in the largest federal lawsuit of the year. Her response? A distracted followed by, "So last week a doctor asked for Lily's number at work. Do you think that's a good sign?" I laughed bitterly. A good sign? If someone so much as texted Lily, The whole family would practically plan a celebration. Another time I took Ethan, Lily's son, for a vaccine. He had a mild fever, so I stayed overnight to watch him. The next morning Lily came to pick him up, glanced at me and said, "Thank God. My son's so strong." Then turned to me with a flat tone, "Don't tell Mom he had a fever. She worries too much." And I nodded. Like always. Because silence had become my assigned role. Until that message arrived. And I realized, they didn't rely on me because I was capable. They used me because I'd always been the backdrop. No one takes pictures with the backdrop. They just stand on it and smile. This Thanksgiving I wouldn't be the backdrop anymore. But I wasn't choosing anger either. Because what I needed wasn't applause from my mother. It was a dinner table where people looked at each other with sincerity. A place where I didn't have to sacrifice in order to be invited. A place where I could just be me. And oddly enough, I already had the key to that place. A place called Vermont. A place none of them had ever set foot in. Last Thanksgiving started with a reminder from my mother over the phone. "Clara, wear something bright, will you? The pictures don't look good when you're in gray like every year." I stood in front of the mirror in my tiny Upper West Side apartment, holding a pale cream dress, and chuckled softly. "Bright," she said, as if my existence had long been a blemish on her vision of a perfect family portrait. I arrived earlier than planned. I always did, setting the table, arranging the chairs, warming up appetizers. That year was no different. Mom had already plated most of the main courses, just missing the cranberry sauce I'd brought from a little handmade shop in Manhattan. When I opened the container, the aroma made me smile. Mom simply nodded, "Okay, save a little for the main table. The rest is fine for the kids." The main table. That table always had fresh linens, cushioned wooden chairs, crystal glasses, and the silver cutlery we only used for major holidays. The kids' table was a folding table in the kitchen corner, plastic chairs that wobbled, food kept in thermal containers. That year I wasn't seated at the main table. "Clara, this spot's for Tyler. He's a guest," Mom said as I stood there frozen, looking at the place card with my name moved aside. Tyler, Lily's ex-boyfriend. The one who once used Mom's credit card for a shady investment and lost everything in 3 weeks. The same man Dad once said would never set foot in this house again. And yet there he was, seated in the center, glass of wine poured first. "I thought Tyler and Lily broke up a long time ago?" I asked softly, confused. Mom didn't even look up as she arranged forks. "They've been talking again. Everyone deserves a second chance, Clara. Don't make things difficult." I swallowed. Everyone deserved a second chance. Except me. When it was time for the family photo, Mom called out, "Clara, stand over on the right." Yes, next to Ethan. But the right was practically out of frame. I shifted slightly to be included and she pulled me back, whispering, "Don't move in too close. You're not with anyone, it throws off the balance." Her words stung like a slap in the glow of fairy lights. I looked at Lily, center of the frame, her 2 children beside her, Tyler's arm draped over her shoulders. My parents on either side, grinning proudly. Me. The one who prepared everything, brought gifts for the kids, always arrived early and left last, shoved to the edge like background decoration. "You know what? I think I'll skip the photo," I said, my voice dry. Mom frowned. "Don't be childish, Clara. Just smile and it'll be over." So I smiled. Smiled to keep her happy. Smiled to hide the tears already welling up behind my lashes. During the meal, I sat at the kids' table with 4 little ones and 2 older uncles who were a bit hard of hearing. Laughter kept bursting from the main table every time Tyler told a story. When I gave Emma another slice of pumpkin pie, she leaned over and whispered, "Miss Clara, why aren't you sitting with my grandma? Aren't you family?" I didn't know how to answer. I smiled awkwardly and said, "I'm the smallest family member here." I still remember that moment. The ceiling light reflecting off plastic plates, the scent of cold chicken, and the sounds from the main table felt like they came from another world. I looked at the joyful children around me, then at the big table where Lily was laughing, her cheeks flushed from wine. Tyler leaned over and whispered something that made my mother burst into giggles, her hand brushing his in a familiar gesture. No one had ever looked at me like that. After dinner, I washed most of the dishes quietly like an unpaid maid. Lily went upstairs early, saying she was too tired and needed a break. Tyler smoked on the porch. My father went to his room and closed the door as always. As I hung the last towel on the hook, my mother came in, drying her hands with a napkin. "Clara," she said, "I'm serious. You should think about finding someone to be with. Being alone this long isn't healthy. You're still young now, but later on." I turned to her, calm but firm. "Mom, I don't need someone to prove I'm worth anything in your eyes." She paused for a moment, then shrugged as if she didn't understand. "I'm only saying it because I care." I didn't say anything else. Not because I didn't have the words, but because I'd said too much over the years. None of it ever hurt. That night, driving home, I stopped at a quiet gas station and sat in the car for a long time. I didn't cry. I just felt hollow. And in that moment, I remembered Lake Champlain and the old wooden house I once saw in a real estate listing. I had saved the photo because the sunset over the lake looked exactly like a dream I had as a child. A place where I stood on a porch holding a cup of tea, surrounded by voices that didn't judge, where no one pushed me out of the frame. I wanted to turn a memory that never existed into something real. Not for my mom. Not for Lily. Not to prove anything to anyone. But because I deserved to sit at my own table. Not as an extra seat. Not just to complete the picture. But to be somewhere I didn't have to earn love. A place where I was no longer someone's shadow. I used to dream of a place like that back in college. It was late fall and a group of us drove to Vermont for a community justice conference. We stayed at a small inn by Lake Champlain. That first morning when I stepped onto the porch, I just froze. The way the mist draped over the lake like silk, the way sunlight touched the moss-covered roof, it felt like I had stepped into another world. I whispered to myself, barely audible, "Someday I'll have a place like this." But like most dreams, it got filed away in a drawer labeled, "Someday." After student loans were paid off, after Mom didn't need money for medication, after Lily stopped asking for help with her kids' tuition. Every time I stepped into my tiny New York apartment, I knew I wasn't allowed to dream too far ahead. Then last year, a random meeting with a client in Vermont brought me back to that area. On the way home, a landslide shut down the highway, and I took a small detour through a road lined with blazing red maple trees. And there it was, nestled between tall trees and the calm lake. A 2-story wooden house with a dark weathered roof, faded green shutters, and a wide porch facing the water. The for sale sign was so faded, it looked like it had been waiting for someone. I stepped out of the car. Stood at the wooden gate, my hands slightly trembling. No agent. No tour. No brochure. But I knew. I knew that was the house I had seen in my 20s dreams. And I wasn't waiting for someday. 4 weeks later, I signed the purchase agreement for less than market value because the previous owner had just moved in with his son in Florida. The house was nearly untouched since the 19th century. Slightly messy, a little worn, but structurally sound and full of soul. I didn't tell anyone. No friends, no social media. Not even my mother. I kept it to myself. A quiet secret that was mine alone, something no one could take or demand from me. I named it Willow Haven after the willow trees lining the lake. A place hidden in nature, far enough to be left alone, close enough for weekend escapes. I imagined using my time off to read by the window, write in my journal, or simply listen to the wind whisper through the roof beams. I never expected it would become the official table for a Thanksgiving without Mom, without Lily, without those comments that I was trying too hard to be happy. But then that message came. And I looked at Willow Haven with new eyes. The night I got that message, I was driving home from work. A soft rain blurred the streetlights. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I opened my laptop and quietly clicked through the photo album from my last trip to the house. The porch corners, the chipped paint on the railing, the backyard still overgrown, all of it made my chest tighten. Not because it wasn't perfect, but because it was real. It existed. It didn't judge me. It didn't ask why I wasn't married. It didn't need me to prove I belonged. I took a blank sheet of paper and began writing with a fountain pen. The first line came naturally, Thanksgiving at Willow Haven. I made a guest list, not of relatives by blood, but of people who had seen me with eyes full of acceptance. Avery, my college friend who never once asked about marriage when I said I was busy with work. My 8th grade teacher, Mrs. Janet, who once told me, "You don't have to be like anyone else, Clara." My cousin Noah, a street artist disowned by his family for choosing an unstable career. And a few others, people I knew would walk into Willow Haven and never make me shrink to fit. I wanted this house to open its doors not to serve someone else's narrative, but to receive. I wanted the first dinner there to have no family portraits, no assigned roles of golden child or disappointment. I wanted the laughter in the living room to be real. And I knew that if I didn't do it now, I'd always be a background character in my own story. I spent that entire night planning. I opened Google Maps to check travel time from the nearest airport. I listed everything that needed fixing in the kitchen to host 10 people. I called the Vermont property manager to ask about renting chairs, blankets, and checking the heating. Every little detail was written down with a care I had never given myself. Not out of fear of getting it wrong, but because I was doing this for me. No more helping anyone. No more living up to anything. Willow Haven wasn't just a house by the lake anymore. It would be where I redefined family. Not those I was born with, but those willing to sit beside me, listen, and understand. A home that didn't need a full cast, didn't require perfection. Just truth. And I knew that fall would be cold. But the fire in that house and in my heart would be the warmest it had ever been. I called Avery on a Saturday morning, just as the sunlight poured through my kitchen window. On the other end, her sleepy, slightly raspy voice picked up. "Clara, sup? You always call right when I pour my coffee." I sat down at the table, my hand circling the rim of my still warm tea. "I need you to come with me to Vermont. For Thanksgiving." There was a pause, then the sound of a chair scraping. "Wait. Vermont? What's going on? You never go anywhere for Thanksgiving." I smiled softly. "This year's different." I told her about Willow Haven. About the message from my mother. About the photo from last year where I was cropped out for not having a +1. I didn't mention the times I went silent, the nights I washed dishes beside the sink with water up to my elbows, hearing laughter from another room. But Avery understood. He always did. "I get it," she said, her voice suddenly sharp. "Then let's make that place a real feast. A true Thanksgiving. No fake smiles. No assigned roles of good child or black sheep. Just real people. Real feelings. For people like you. Like me. Like everyone who's ever been pushed away from the table for not fitting the family script." Avery's words made me go quiet. I had only thought about escaping. Creating a little corner of peace just for myself. But what she said opened another door. I wasn't the only one carrying that wound. I wasn't the only one who had ever sat at the extra table, feeling like they were being pushed aside. If I had a place like Willow Haven, why not open it up? Not for revenge, but for healing. Not with blame, but with invitation. "I'll take care of the menu," Avery said quickly, her voice full of energy like she could already picture the whole scene. "Let's do the classics. Turkey, mashed potatoes, but with local ingredients. Oh, and we'll add a bit of French flair, to match that lakeside Vermont villa vibe. I've got my grandmother's red wine apple tart recipe. Trust me, one bite and you'll never forget it." I laughed, really laughed. "Sounds like you're about to open a home restaurant." "Not a restaurant," she corrected. "A feast. And not for phonies." After that call, I opened my notebook and began a list. Not of relatives by blood, but of people who had walked into my life with honesty, even if only for a short while, but long enough that I'd never forget them. First name on the list was Mrs. Janet, my 8th grade English teacher. The one who noticed me in the middle of a noisy classroom when I wrote an essay about silence. She once told me after class, "You don't have to be loud to be seen. You write with depth." When I got into college, I sent her a thank you card. My mom, on the other hand, called the essay long-winded and boring. I typed a short email to Mrs. Janet. "If you still remember your former student Clara, I'd love to invite you to Vermont for Thanksgiving. It might be the first time we've truly shared a meal." Next came Noah, my cousin. He used to bring his guitar to every family party, only to be told to quiet down so the grown-ups can talk. He dropped out of college sophomore year, worked in restaurants, then joined a street performance troupe. My mother called him unstable. But he was the one who sat beside me after I broke up with Matt. The only one who didn't ask why I wasn't married yet, just handed me a cold beer and said, he wasn't worth it. I texted Noah, "There's a place this year for your music. And for you." I called Uncle Henry, my dad's younger brother, who hadn't been invited to our house since he came out. When I was a kid, he used to handcraft birthday cards for me, but later my mom forbade them, saying they were inappropriate. I never protested. But this year I wanted him at the main table with his partner. I wrote, "I'm sorry for staying silent for so long. If you're willing, I'd be honored to welcome you to Willow Haven." I invited Beth, my former neighbor. My mother once called her an unmarried woman hoarding cats in a 300-square-foot apartment. But Beth was the one who cared for me for 3 days straight when I caught a viral fever right after moving to New York. Never once asking if I deserved it. One by one I reached out. Not with promises. Just with the truth. That I was hosting a small gathering by the lake for those who knew what it felt like to be forgotten, but chose kindness anyway. That they didn't have to perform, meet expectations, or explain anything. The first message came back from Noah. "Awesome. Can I bring my guitar and my new girlfriend? She makes traditional pumpkin pie." Mrs. Janet responded with a scanned handwritten note. "I've waited years for an invitation like this, Clara." Beth texted, "As long as I can bring my 2 cats, I'm in." And Uncle Henry? He wrote just one line, "You just made me believe in the word family again." I closed my laptop and sat quietly by the window, where the afternoon sun slipped through the curtain. Thanksgiving wasn't something I had to endure. It was something I was creating. Not to prove anything. Just to let good people sit side by side without bowing their heads. A feast. Not for phonies. Just for the honest-hearted. The next afternoon, right after I wrapped up a virtual meeting, my phone buzzed nonstop. A wave of messages lit up the screen, each tiny line of text like a current warming my chest. The first was from Noah. "Are you sure I can come? I mean, no one in the family has invited me to Thanksgiving in 7 years." I replied immediately, "More sure than anything. And if you bring your guitar, I'll save you a seat by the fireplace." A few minutes later, he sent an old photo of us as kids. Noah sitting cross-legged on the carpet, holding a green plastic toy guitar, and me laughing as he sang a silly song. Underneath he wrote, "This time I'll sing for real." The next message was from Beth. "Claire, you just made me cry. No one's ever invited me to a place this beautiful. If my 2 cats are welcome, I'll book my ticket right away." I smiled and typed, "The door's open for humans and cats. And could you bring that rose-patterned blanket you used to wrap the apple pie in? I miss that smell." I still remember her ground floor apartment in the old New York building, where I knocked on Christmas Eve at 24. I had come home late. Mom hadn't called. Lily had said she already had plans with her little family. Beth opened the door with flour on her hands, pulled me inside to a table meant for 2, and a cat. I'd never felt so deeply the warmth of being invited. Then a message came from an unknown number. "This is Don, your dad's younger brother. Not sure if you still have this number, but it takes guts to invite an old oddball like me to Thanksgiving." I didn't respond right away. I opened an old photo on my laptop, a blurry shot from my grandparents' yard when I was 11. Don stood at the far left, holding up a watermelon, smiling big while the rest of the family looked away. My grandfather never forgave him for being gay. My dad only said, "Let's not talk about that in the house." Me. I once looked down in shame when classmates asked, "Isn't your Uncle Don kind of weird?" I finally replied, "I do remember this number. And I hope you'll bring that same smile from back then. Willow Haven will be the first place with a seat of honor just for you." 3 dots appeared. Then his message came, "You have no idea, Clara. I've waited half my life for words like that." At that moment I was sitting alone in my little kitchen, the ceiling light flickering with a soft golden glow. The kettle hissed quietly, but my heart went still. Not from sentiment alone, but because every person on that list, Noah, Beth, Dawn, they weren't just accepting an invitation to dinner. They were receiving something everyone craves but not all are given: the right to exist without having to hide or mold themselves to someone else's comfort. I opened my notebook and began listing preparations. Avery had the menu, but I wanted each guest to choose something tied to a memory of their own. I called Noah. "Do you remember Grandma's mashed sweet potatoes? The ones with the toasted marshmallow topping?" "No one forgets that," Noah chuckled. "That smell was our whole childhood. Think we can recreate it?" "Sure. But only if we use the old wooden spoon. No blender. Has to be made by hand." We both laughed. That laughter, so simple, was the first time in years I heard it without needing armor. I called Beth next, asking if she wanted to bring anything. "Clara," she said, her voice steady and warm like when she used to stroke my hair after a fever. "I'll bring apple pie and pumpkin pie, classic style. And the wine, let me take care of that. There's a small vineyard north of Boston. I've been meaning to place an order. Would you like me to set up a separate room for you? Or would you prefer the back cottage? It's quieter. As long as there's a window facing the lake, I'm fine with anything. Oh, and my 2 cats will be bringing their own shawls, don't worry. I hung up the phone with a feeling in my chest like I'd just accomplished something far bigger than organizing a trip. It wasn't about logistics. It was about slowly undoing the shadows my family had cast for years on people like them. That evening, I got a text from Avery. I've already ordered the handcrafted wooden cutlery. For the tablecloth, I found Italian linen in a warm, earthy brown. Cozy but still natural. I typed back, Avery, I can't believe this is really happening. She responded right away, and we're just getting started. I closed my laptop and looked out the window. The city was still loud, still distant like always. But somewhere up north, along a tree-lined road glowing with fiery red maple leaves, Willow Haven was waiting. That old house, once a private dream, was about to become a gathering place for people who had once been turned away, called different, pushed aside for not fitting in. Just this once they wouldn't be seated at the extra table. And they would know, the invitation was real. That night, while I was going over the guest list again in the living room, my phone lit up with a name I didn't expect, Ethan. I hesitated for a second, then answered. His voice was soft, nothing like the confident teenager I used to hear at family dinners. Aunt Clara. I'm sorry it's late. Are you busy? I smiled, trying to keep my tone light. No, I'm free. What's going on, Ethan? There was silence on the line. I heard someone yelling in the background. Probably Lily. Then a door slammed. A long exhale followed, like he had slid down to sit on the floor with his cheek against the wall. Aunt Clara. I saw people talking about the Vermont trip. About your house, on Facebook. Mom's furious. She says you're manipulating everyone. Grandma's been crying. They've been fighting for days. Mom says you're selfish. Grandma says the family's breaking apart over one stupid meal. I froze. I had never talked to Ethan about the fractures in the family. To him, I was always fun Aunt Clara. The one who brought cookies from Manhattan, helped him with his Independence Day project, quietly fixed his wooden train model the night before his school exhibit. Ethan, I asked gently, are you calling because you're curious? He took a deep breath. Then came a sentence that sliced through the night. Aunt Clara, can I come to you? It's just arguing here. Mom's exhausted. Grandma only cries. Me. I just want peace. I sat still. I know I'm not invited. But I saw pictures of your house. It looked so open. It made me feel like I could breathe. I promise I won't be any trouble. I just want a Thanksgiving like in the movies. Just once. I held the phone closer, blinking fast to hold back whatever was rising behind my chest. I couldn't speak for a few seconds. Ethan was Lily's son. He was part of the pain. But he was also the boy who ran after me last Thanksgiving when I left early, pressing a tiny red maple leaf into my hand. Don't be sad, Aunt Clara. I like your red coat. You look like a superhero. Ethan, I said slowly, have you talked to your mom? No. She'd never let me. She told me not to talk to you at all. But I'm 15. And if I ask Dad, he'll probably say yes. He doesn't want to be stuck in the middle of this. I closed my eyes, trying to find a steady line between heart and mind. Inviting Ethan might mean inviting the shadow of Lily, bringing complications, maybe even chaos, into a space I was trying to keep safe. But not inviting him felt like letting go of a small hand reaching for me, not because of who I was, but because I might be the last person he felt could choose him. I can't promise yet, Ethan, I said honestly. I need to think. I have to be sure this place I'm creating will be good for everyone, including you. I need to ask myself if I can do that without repeating old mistakes. I understand. His voice cracked. But if you say no, I won't be mad. I just wanted you to know that if you call, I'll come right away. I'll peel potatoes, wash dishes, do anything. I just want to be there. I smiled softly. I hear you. Now try to get some sleep, okay? After the call, I sat quietly in the room. The wind whistled through the doorframe, the desk lamp glowed warm, and the guest list sat unfinished beside me. I looked at the handwritten line that read, Willow Haven, this year's Thanksgiving, only invite those who are real. And I asked myself, was Ethan real? He wasn't fake. He wasn't calculating. He was carrying a small crack inside, a kind I understood better than anyone. And if I didn't reach for that child, then no matter how perfect the pies or how heartfelt the toasts, could this feast really be a place of healing? I didn't decide that night. But my heart tilted gently toward the first empty chair meant for someone I never thought would call when no one else was listening. Took me 3 nights to decide. Every time I saw Ethan's name on the guest list note, I hesitated, deleted it, then wrote it again. In the end, I simply wrote, Ethan plus Rosie. Rosie was Ethan's little sister, 8 years old, with curly hair like strands of tinsel. She often hid behind him at family parties, quiet, often interrupted by grown-ups saying things like, kids should just sit still and look pretty. I didn't have many memories with her, but I remembered the way her eyes lit up when I gave her a little fox-shaped cookie last year. She didn't eat it right away, she clutched it like it was something rare. I called their dad Lily's ex-husband. We weren't close, but he had always treated me with respect. I know this is a bit unusual, I began, but Ethan called me. He wants to come to Vermont for Thanksgiving. I'm not pressuring you, but if you're okay with it, I'll arrange for a private car to pick them up. There was a pause. Then he sighed. Claire, if you can give them a few peaceful days, I agree. Things here are a mess. Lily's not the same anymore. And her mother, well, you know. I won't let them get hurt, I said quietly. I know you won't. I booked a private SUV and scheduled a pickup at their father's house in New Hampshire for early Wednesday morning. The driver was a friend of Avery's named Kyle. Quiet, polite, a former serviceman. I sent along a bag of snacks, some storybooks, and a hand-drawn treasure map I made myself. A quest map, leading to Willow Haven with red dots marking imaginary places like the Story Tree Hollow, the wish-granting chair, and the fireplace that warms hearts. That afternoon, when the car pulled up at the front gate of the estate, I was already waiting. Ethan stepped out first, backpack slung over one shoulder, holding Rosie's hand. She wore a purple knit hat, her wide eyes scanning the place. When she saw me, she didn't run, didn't grin like in the movies. She simply nodded, like she was measuring the distance between imagination and reality. Hi, Aunt Clara, Ethan said quietly but clearly. We're here. I opened the gate and held out my hand to them. Welcome to Willow Haven. From now on, you don't need permission to breathe deeply. Ethan chuckled. Rosie gave a tiny smile, just enough to tell me that, at the very least, she felt safe. I led the kids into the house, past the raw wood-paneled hallway, through the living room where the fireplace glowed warmly, and up to the attic room I had prepared just for them. A cozy space with a round window overlooking the lake, 2 small beds with wool blankets, a low bookshelf and oversized pillows scattered across the floor. This is our room? Rosie asked, still not quite believing it. Yes. And no one here will ask you to make your bed before you're allowed to smile. Ethan set down his backpack and turned to look at me. You know, yesterday Mom said your dinner party was fake. But this place feels real. I didn't answer. I just placed my hand gently on his shoulder, a silent promise spoken without words. That evening, I let the kids help in the kitchen with Avery. Ethan sliced apples, Rosie picked rosemary leaves, and together they set the table with eyes full of light. No one shouted when the water boiled over. No one sighed when she dropped a fork. When Rosie spilled some flour on the floor, Avery just laughed. Well, flour likes its freedom, you know. Dinner was simple. A pot of French stew, toasted bread, and a fresh vegetable salad. Ethan had 3 servings and Rosie asked for seconds without glancing at anyone for permission. When I gently laid her napkin in her lap, she looked up and whispered, I like it here, because there are no mirrors. I paused, surprised. What do you mean, Rosie? At home, every room has a mirror. Mom makes me look into it to see if I'm being good. But here, there's only light. I went silent, not because it was poetic, but because it was painfully true. That night, I brought them out to the front porch where the moon lit the lake. Ethan sat hugging his knees, watching the shimmering water. Aunt Clara, he asked, when I grow up, do you think I could buy a place like this? You can create any place you want, I said, if you build it with kindness. Willow Haven doesn't exist because I'm rich. It exists because I was tired of houses full of mirrors and too few honest hearts. Ethan nodded, then leaned into me. Rosie had already dozed off in Avery's arms. The night air was cold, but something inside me felt warm, as if this moment, this space I had built, was beginning to become something far bigger than I'd ever planned. A home that needed no mirrors, just warm hearts. The next morning, as I was laying out toast on the breakfast table, my phone began to buzz. The screen lit up with the name Aunt Marianne, my mother's younger sister. I hesitated, surprised. She usually hosted her own holiday parties in Connecticut and rarely called me, especially not this early. "This is Clara," I answered. My God, what is going on? "Your mother just called me at 6:30 this morning, crying and yelling, saying you stole the whole family from her. She said you're destroying the family tradition and shaming everyone." I tightened my grip on the teacup but kept my voice calm. "What do you think, Aunt Marianne?" She was quiet for a few seconds, then sighed. "I think your mother is scared. She never imagined you were strong enough to create something that people would choose over her." I smiled faintly. There wasn't much else to say. That call felt like the opening ripple in a chain reaction I had expected, yet still couldn't keep my heart from stirring. Less than an hour later, Uncle Henry texted, "Your mom just called demanding I cancel my trip to Vermont. Said if I go, I won't be welcome in her house again." Then came a message from Noah. "She called me a traitor. Said she tolerated my art degree back then and now I'm siding with you out of spite." Beth said Mom called her directly, no greeting, just one line. "I can't believe you'd help my daughter divide our bloodline." But it was the message from Miss Janet, my old teacher, that made me sit down. Mom called her too. At first she was polite, but when Janet said she was still attending, Mom said, "I truly don't understand how someone in education can support such disgraceful disobedience." I knew how far my mother could take a narrative. She didn't need to yell. Just a few carefully planted words, ungrateful, disrespectful, breaking tradition, were enough to shake the trust of anyone who didn't know the whole truth. That afternoon she called me directly. I looked at the screen, hesitated, then answered. "Clara." Her voice was cold, clipped, metallic. "I'm here, Mom." "What are you doing? You think I don't know? The whole family is turning their backs on tradition because of you. Because of your ridiculous lake house circus." I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only way to stay steady. "You've destroyed what this family held sacred for 30 years. Tonight's dinner should have been where the grandkids gathered, where Lily made her honey ham that everyone loves. And now it's all gone. If your grandmother were alive, she'd cry from shame." I placed my hand on the wooden table. My palm felt cold. "Mom, I didn't stop anyone from going anywhere. I simply sent an invitation. Whoever wanted to come, came." "Don't play sweet with me," she nearly growled. "You know exactly what you're doing. You're dividing us, Clara. You're pulling everyone toward you by making yourself look like a victim." "Is that really what you think?" I asked, voice quieter. "You think I did all this just to pull people away from you? What else could it be? Did you ever consider, maybe I'm not doing this against anyone. Maybe I'm just trying to build a place where I can breathe?" There was a long pause on the other end. Then her voice hardened. "You'll regret this. When the dust settles, you'll realize you were nothing but the one who broke our tradition. And then you'll be left there in that cold house with no one remembering you." I took a deep breath and replied slowly, "If the place I'm in is built with sincerity, with the laughter of children who don't have to behave perfectly to be loved, then I'll accept that cost." She said nothing. Then the sound of the call ending sliced through the silence like scissors snipping a final thread. I set the phone down and looked out the window. Snow hadn't fallen yet, but a soft fog had settled over the lake. From the living room, I could hear Rosie's giggles as Avery taught her a cup-stacking game. Noah's guitar hummed in the reading nook. Beth was chatting with Uncle Don about how to grow lavender in small pots. No one was yelling. No one was forcing anyone to show up the right way. And I knew, my mother might never come. He might never forgive. But I already had. I had forgiven myself for staying silent too long. Forgiven the past for making me believe that love must always come with conditions. Here, in this house, no one expected to become a place where they were chosen. I realized I was preserving a very real kind of tradition. The tradition of sincerity. No pretense. No mirrors. No fear. The sky had begun to darken, and the warm golden lights from inside the house reflected softly off the glass windows, casting a dreamlike glow across the porch. In the kitchen, Avery was showing Rosie how to arrange pumpkin tarts on a platter, while Noah quietly strummed an old tune on his guitar, soft enough to turn the entire room tender. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the aroma of roasted chicken and baked apples filled the air with something I thought I'd never feel again. A real Thanksgiving. We didn't start the meal with a long prayer. No one stood to declare who was the pride of the family. No comparing wedding rings, no elaborate dishes meant to impress, no mention of whose child earned which scholarship. We simply began with one question: what do you feel grateful for in yourself today? Uncle Don placed his hand on his wine glass, his voice trembling slightly. I'm grateful to still be here. To sit next to people who don't need me to pretend to be someone else. Beth smiled, her eyes glistening. I'm grateful that Clara didn't let her mother's old words make her forget the kind, bright little girl she used to be. Noah chuckled gently. I'm grateful that today no one asked how much I made selling paintings. Rosie whispered, I'm grateful that Miss Clara gave me extra pie without making me clean my plate first. Laughter broke out around the table. I looked at each face and my heart filled with a strange sensation, peace that didn't need to be earned. I stood up, my hand resting softly on the back of my chair. I'm grateful that after all these years of trying to please everyone, today I did just one thing right. I did what allowed me to be myself. The table fell silent for a moment. Then the gentle clinking of glasses filled the air, like quiet applause made of understanding. But just then, the sound of an engine echoed from a distance. I turned toward the large window facing the front drive. A sleek black SUV pulled in, headlights sweeping across the leafless maples. The door opened. My mother stepped out, her face pale, tense. Behind her was Lily, her hair pulled back in a rush, hands gripping her coat like it was the only thing holding her up. No one spoke. All eyes turned toward the front door, breath held in suspension. The door opened. A cold wind swept in with their footsteps, carrying a weight no one had invited. My mother glanced around, her voice sharp as a blade. Well, quite the crowd. I stepped forward, calm. Mom, I didn't think you'd come. She gave a tight smile. You thought wrong. I'm still part of this family. No matter how far you try to pull away, blood is still blood. Lily didn't look at me. Her eyes darted across the room as if searching for a place to hide, or an explanation for why she'd come. Avery quietly ushered Rosie and her younger sister into the reading room, leaving space between the grown-ups. I lowered my voice. Why are you here, Mom? To blame? Or to understand? I'm here because I can't believe you threw this little dinner just to manipulate everyone to shame your family. Her voice cracked. You humiliated me in front of our relatives. No, Mom. I met her eyes. I invited the people you pushed out of your life. The ones you deemed not good enough. She opened her mouth, but Lily spoke first, softly but clearly enough for everyone to hear. Mom, don't put all this on Clara. She turned sharply to her youngest daughter. What did you say? Lily stepped back half a pace. I'm divorced, you know that. Ethan called Clara because our house is always filled with arguments, silence, pressure. I'm exhausted. None of us expected her to say it. Not even me. But her eyes, tired, cracked, said more than her words. My mother looked at us as if we were strangers. Then her voice softened just enough to tremble. You think you're strong? You think this is strength? What you're doing is destroying everything I ever tried to hold together. I replied slowly, you didn't preserve a family. You preserved fear, comparisons, and impossible molds. But here I'm building something new. Not perfect, but real. She said nothing. Her face slackened as if the words were too foreign to understand. Then she turned and walked out, Lily trailing behind. No one followed them. I stood there a moment longer, then turned back to the table. The candles still flickered. The scent of roasted chicken still lingered. Everyone sat waiting for me. I sat down, poured myself a glass of wine, and smiled gently. Shall we keep eating? And the meal continued. Didn't have to be perfect. Just true. I hadn't even fully settled into my chair when my mother came back. She hadn't left after all. Lily stood behind her, uncertain. My mother set her purse on a chair, her voice as sharp as steel. If this is family, why weren't all family invited? Or is this just some gathering of cast-offs trying to comfort each other? The room stilled. Beth squeezed my hand under the table. I kept my gaze steady, but a chill ran down my spine. Uncle Don sipped his wine and shook his head softly. I never cast anyone aside, ma'am. Beth replied, her voice calm. But some people choose to walk away when others don't meet their impossible expectations. My mother turned to Beth, eyes flashing. And who are you in this family to speak? Noah spoke up, eyes steady. She's one of the only people here telling the truth, ma'am. My mother gave a cold laugh, sweeping her gaze across the room like watching a bad stage play. This is a dinner of failures. The divorced, the unemployed, the forgotten. Clara, do you really think putting on a show like this will make people love you more? Or are you just trying to fill the space left behind when no one picked you? I heard every word. Each one was a blade to scars I thought I'd long buried. But I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I rose and walked toward her. You're right, I said evenly. I wasn't picked. Not once. Not twice. 35 years of never being chosen. Her eyes wavered just a little. When I was little, I had to sit out of family photos because my dress clashed. I made straight A's and you said, smart girls don't get husbands. I paid Lily's tuition, you called it duty. I treated your illness, you called it obligation. You never once hugged me as a child, but you hugged Lily's ex-boyfriend like he was heaven sent. I turned to Lily, my tone softening. I don't blame you. I know you were molded too. But today I'm done pretending. I took a deep breath and faced my mother. If me hosting one meal where people feel equal and loved makes you ashamed, maybe you should ask yourself what part of that feels like betrayal. She started to reply, but Ethan stood up. Grandma, he said, his voice shaking but strong, if these people are failures, then I want to fail forever. All eyes turned to the 15-year-old boy. He didn't back down. No one here yells at me for being messy. No one calls me a disappointment. I get to eat a whole meal without worrying about being told boys can't be soft. And I've never seen my mom smile like she does here. Lily covered her mouth. Her eyes were rimmed with red. Ethan continued, turning to me. Miss Clara, thank you for showing me there can be a different kind of family. My hand trembled slightly, but I tightened my grip. Not out of anger, but because my heart was opening in a way I never dared to imagine. The room went silent, as if even the air had paused to listen. At last my mother stood still. She glanced around, her gaze no longer as proud as before. Lily stepped closer to me and whispered, I'm sorry for letting you carry everything alone for so long. I gently squeezed my sister's hand. You weren't the only one. We grew up in the same house. The only difference is, I chose to stop. I turned to face my mother, without asking permission, without waiting to be allowed, without trying to earn approval. You can stay if you want to listen, if you want to understand. But if you came only to speak and deny, then I hope you go back. No one kicked her out. No one shouted. There was no need for noise. But the silence after my words was the final boundary. She looked at me, then at every face around the table, whole, warm, imperfect but real. After a moment, she slowly picked up her handbag and walked out. No one said another word. I sat down. The wine glass still held the warmth of my hand as Ethan placed his hand on my shoulder. You're the first person who's ever made me want to grow up. I smiled softly. And the dinner continued. No more explanations needed. No more roles to play. No one left behind. I sat there in silence, watching my mother's shadow fade behind the frosted glass. All sounds seemed to recede, leaving only the soft breeze drifting through the windows from the lake. Lily still stood beside me, not turning away, not avoiding my gaze. Her eyes looked straight into mine, no longer filled with resentment or insecurity, only something deeply human and true. We used to stand so close, under the same roof, sharing the same meals, even appearing in the same family photos, and yet we were strangers. I could feel that distance slowly fading. Did you know, Lily whispered, I used to think you were so strong you didn't need anyone's love? I turned to look at her. The sentence was light, but it hit so hard my chest tightened. Actually, I said, I used to think the opposite. That you were the one always cherished, so you'd never understand what it feels like to be compared, to be pushed aside. But I was compared, Lily murmured, lips pressed together. Compared to you. I didn't say anything. I simply wrapped my arms around her. A hug without bitterness. No longer a gesture of distance or a grip meant to retreat. It was a real embrace, between two people who once had to compete for affection in a house where love wasn't shared fairly. Avery stepped in quietly, placing a hand on my shoulder. Everyone's gathering around the fire outside. If you're ready. I nodded. Lily nodded too. We walked out together, our steps pressing into the damp grass from the light afternoon rain. The air had turned crisp, but the fire blazed bright in the yard, surrounded by a circle of wooden chairs. Uncle Don was strumming his guitar. A simple, warm tune blended with the gentle crackling of flames. Beth poured hot tea for each person, and Noah carried out a basket of warm cornbread. Ethan and his little sister sat close, wrapped in a thick-knit blanket. As I approached, he looked up at me with clear, proud eyes. I sat down in the circle. Everyone grew quiet. Then Avery spoke first. We've had dinner full of flavor. Now let's each share just one thing. One thing you're grateful for, not because someone gave it to you, but because you finally got to be yourself. Uncle Don spoke slowly. I'm grateful that I get to be called by my real name without having to bow my head and explain myself. Beth added, I'm grateful that today no one told me I should lose weight just to be easier on the eyes. Noah chuckled. I'm grateful I could bring my paints to the table instead of hiding them in the attic. Lily looked at me and said, I'm grateful that I get to be a sister, not someone's cuter version. Ethan glanced around, then stood up. I'm grateful that no one yelled at me today for spelling a word wrong. And that today I know it's not wrong to want to be loved. I looked at every face. These people had once been pushed away from family tables. For their gender, their dreams, their personal choices, for not following the script. And now, here they were, eyes unafraid, laughter unfiltered, love unbargained. I took a deep breath and spoke. I'm grateful that I didn't break. That I still had the chance to start over. And that I no longer have to force myself to be called kind in a family that wasn't kind to me. Avery passed me a slip of paper with a handwritten line, a promise for future Thanksgivings. I read aloud. We, who were once forgotten at the table, commit to creating a space where your presence is enough. You don't have to be better, prettier, more successful, or more obedient. Just be you. I passed the pen around. Each person signed, not a declaration for the newspaper, but a quiet thread tying together hearts that had once been broken. Lily signed last. She looked at me hesitant. Can I keep this? I nodded. This time you hold it for me. We stayed by the fire until the flames turned to glowing embers. No one wanted to leave. But I knew from this moment on, we no longer had to search for a seat in some faded family photo. We had our own family now. And a new tradition had begun at a table where no invitation was needed. If you've ever felt pushed out of a dinner table, a home, or a relationship, just because you didn't fit someone else's mold, you're not alone. And if you've ever sat in a room full of people and still felt invisible, remember this. There are always places and people ready to listen, just because you are you. Clara's story isn't just about a different kind of meal. It's a reminder that real love never needs conditions. And sometimes, the most beautiful traditions aren't passed down, they're the ones we dare to begin. If you've ever felt something similar to Clara, or have a family story of your own, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear it. Because sometimes what makes us strongest is knowing we don't have to carry it all alone anymore. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can keep exploring these moving stories of family, healing, and truth, where every memory, every scar, every conversation can lead us to something real.